Hi friends, it's your pal Scott, and today we are going to talk about Stranger Things, Season 2, Episode 1, MADMAX. All right, so we pick it up, and we're back with the core four. And I wanted to talk about this. I want to talk about this entire season through the lens of Dustin Henderson. All right, so he's one of the core four, and so we pick this back up with back in Hawkins, Indiana, and we're with the core four, and we see all of them getting ready to jet out to rally at and where are they rallying? They're rallying at a arcade. So the Duffer Brothers, man, they still do. They have such a massive mega hit with this show. And one of the reasons why is nostalgia. People like to remember old periods in their life, right? Well, one of those and the 80s are really iconic. There's just a ton of things from the 80s. It's an iconic decade, like a really powerful decade. It's interesting, like you think about decades that happen in, like, I'm thinking about the 1900s, right? And like the 1960s, just a banger decade, right? Like so much changed. Music, we went to the moon, like there was an assassination of President Kennedy. It's just an iconic decade, all right? And then you think about the 1920s. What? There's just these dead zone decades where nothing really happens, and like comparatively, like history is history, and every decade has something significant. But some decades are just indelibly stamped into their century. And I really think the 80s was one of them. And so we're looking at the 80s. The 80s is this super iconic, super famous decade in the 1900s. And at this part of the episode, we're seeing the core four. We're seeing Mike Wheeler. We're seeing Will Byers, who is back, right? We're seeing Dustin Henderson, okay? We're seeing Lucas Sinclair. And this is important because so much happened in season one that it's hard to imagine that life could be returning to normal, right? But that's one of the things we're seeing in this first scene back with the core four, is that they're all getting together. And what are they getting together? They're getting together to go to an arcade. And and so the 1980s are this super iconic decade. And arcades are a super, super iconic aspect of the 1980s. And they really don't exist today. We still have them, but they don't exist the way they existed in the 80s. In the 80s, they were everywhere. You would bring, entire rolls of quarters, and you would just go there for hours, right? Now it's a special destination, and, you have to go to a Dave & Buster's, or it's just not the same. Now, what's really wild is we have arcades. They're just sitting in everybody's house. That's why. So the arcade did not go anywhere. The arcade transformed, right? And it's not that like people aren't going to arcades anymore. They're sitting on their couch to go to the arcade. That is the difference. And it is arcades didn't disappear. They exploded, right? They just exploded all over society. It was like American society specifically. So that's kind of interesting. But all the boys get together and they go to the arcade together, right? And it's frenetic and it's joyful. And so they all go and they all rally around Dustin Henderson, and he walks up to his favorite machine, and he's like, okay, I'm going to throw it down on Dig Dug, right? And everybody's like, wait a second, you got the #1 score on Dig Dug. What's this? So they all look, and it says MADMAX, right? And they're like, who the heck is that, right? And so they're shocked that somebody has beaten Dustin Henderson's score on Dig Dug. And so they're all speculating, I wonder who MADMAX is, right? I won't bury the lead here. MADMAX is Sadie Sink, Maxine, right? Max. And Max is new to Hawkins, Indiana, with her brother Billy, right? And they will encounter her. They actually encounter her at school, But they, but so basically, and this is kind of a big deal because again, it's like Hawkins, Indiana is this, like, it's an extreme, it's a really organic location, right? And they're like, this is middle America, right? And that one of the things that was so cool was, like, they were like, oh, this weird place, all this weird stuff is Hawkins Lab is happening right under your nose in middle America. And it was hard for people to even understand what was happening and what was going on, and it was really interesting, right? So but it also, Hawkins is a real location, and so Billy and Max are brand new to the city, and when people come into the into the city, the boys are there, right? So they're gonna encounter Max, right? And they'll encounter her brother later. But but the Duffer Brothers are showing us that this is truly an organic world where things happen, right? And they do a really good job of just keeping the wheels running on their organic world. And I know that's a bad analogy there, but I think you know where I'm heading with that. All right, so at this point, also we should know Will Byers is back, right? And he's like, literally, they had a funeral for him, right? Like, but now he's back, and everything's been explained away, and his friends are very protective of him, right? But one of the things that's happening is his time in the Upside Down left scars. They left impacts on him personally. And the reality is, the Upside Down, this, special circle of hell, essentially, it has left its mark on him. And so he walks outside of the arcade, and he literally sees the Upside Down, which still has its impact on Hawkins, Indiana. He can just see it in a different way than anyone else can, right? And so, and we end with Mike Wheeler coming out and going, "Hey, Will, what's wrong? Come on back in. Let's play Spy Hunter." And so, but also just, you could tell that the boys have been through something together, right? They know things that other people don't know. They adventure at the table, and now they're adventuring together beyond the table. They are literally heroes. They have, saved Hawkins, even though Hawkins doesn't know it. And in Dungeons & Dragons, we call that a folk hero, right? Like somebody who saved the village. Now, what's wild is there are people who, Joyce Byers knows that they saved the village, and Jim Hopper knows that they've saved the village, and they each know that they protected each other and they fought for Hawkins and they saved the village. Very, very cool, opening episode. We'll cut it there. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion, nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.